A debt recorded in obsidian and light. Commander Ava Rostova watched the ghost in the machine bleed across her command deck's main viewer. The ghost was a Dyson ring shattered millennia ago by forces no living civilization could command. It was a skeletal wreath laid upon the casket of a dead star, a place of sanctioned dread and whispered warnings. Her ship, the compact patrol cutter Vigil, drew a lonely line through the system's prescribed quarantine zone. The official reason was gravimetric instability. The real reason was the thing at its heart: the obsidian anchorage. It wasn't on any official charts, but it was in every sailor's ghost story. A silent, impossibly black station of unknown origin hanging in the void where the system's primary should have been. It did not move. It did not transmit. For 300 years of compact expansion, it had done nothing but absorb the light of distant galaxies. Rostova's mission was simple: watch it log any changes and chase off the ghouls who came to pick at the system's bones. A low, resonant hum suddenly vibrated through the Vigil's deck plates, a feeling more than a sound. It was a chord played on a string the size of a planet. Every eye on the bridge snapped to the main viewer. A filigree of silver light, fine as spun wire, was tracing its way across the anchorage's surface. It was a sigil impossibly complex, waking from a long slumber. The universe does not forgive debt. It merely defers payment. On the civilian freighter, Starlight Wanderer huddled in a sensor shadow behind a shard of the Dyson ring. Captain Ilya Vorchek watched his screens with greedy eyes. "They see it," he hissed to his first mate. The compact long leash is watching the old ghost wake up. The mate, a burly Cathar with scar tissue ringing one eye, grunted. "More reason to be gone, Ilya. That thing is bad energy." Ilya just smiled, his teeth uneven in the gloom. "That's not energy, you fool. That's profit." "Report!" Rostova's voice was clipped, betraying none of the cold dread coiling in her gut. Lieutenant Jax, her tactical officer, pointed a trembling finger at a secondary screen. "Commander, it's the Rust Hounds. Vorchek's ship. They're firing a resonance torpedo at the anchorage. A shellcracker. They think it's a vault." Dr. Aris Thorne, the mission's resident xenohistorian, looked ill. "They have no idea what they're doing. That isn't a vault. It's a memorial. Or a tomb." The hum intensified. The silver sigil on the anchorage flared no longer a delicate tracing, but a brand of searing white light. It pulsed once in time with a new tone that echoed through every speaker on the Vigil. "A question is not a threat, but an answer can be." Magister Rostova addressed the ship's integrated fleet mind. "Analysis. Now." The AI's synthesized voice was calm, a placid lake in the rising storm of the bridge. Querying us about what Jax demanded, his hands flying across his console, to arm the Vigil's point defense cannons. Magister replied without inflection. The Rust Hound's torpedo struck the anchorage. There was no explosion. No flash of kinetic or thermal energy. The obsidian surface simply absorbed it. The silver sigil pulsed again, faster this time. The query from the ancient station grew more insistent, a spike of pure data that made the lights on the bridge flicker. "A law unwritten is a cage unlocked. They're petitioning it," Thorne whispered, his eyes wide with horrified realization. "By attacking it, they are lodging a claim under some ancient barbaric right of salvage. Might makes right." He looked at Rostova, his expression pleading. "It's asking us for a counter-argument. A better law." Rostova's mind raced. The Compact's non-interference directive was absolute. The anchorage was a pre-compact artifact of immense power. To interact was to invite censure court-martial, the ruin of her career. To do nothing was to let a pack of pirates lay claim to something beyond their comprehension. "They are firing again," Jax reported, his voice tight. Another resonance torpedo spat from the Starlight Wanderer. Magister Rostova ordered, her voice ringing with sudden authority. "Open a channel to the anchorage, all bands. Send it our charter. The whole damn thing. Compact founding documents, the articles of benevolent intervention, the statutes of first contact." She paused, then added, "And send them my command record." "Unredacted." Thorn gasped. "Commander, your record contains classified actions. It contains my choices." Rostova cut him off. "Let it ask. I will answer." The ledger of command is written in the ink of action. The second torpedo vanished into the obsidian hull just as the Vigil's powerful transmitters flooded the void with data. The silver sigil on the anchorage stopped pulsing. It held its impossibly bright glow, steady and clear. The hum vibrating through the ship ceased, replaced by a profound and unnerving silence. The query signal cut out. For a long, heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. The rust-hound vessel, the Starlight Wanderer, began to turn, likely preparing for a third, more powerful shot. On the bridge of the Vigil, the crew held a collective breath. Then a new light appeared on the anchorage. It wasn't the silver of the sigil. It was a deep, juridical blue. A single needle-thin beam of it lanced out and touched the Vigil's forward view screen. It wasn't a weapon. It was a connection, Magister announced. "What does that mean?" Jax asked, his hand still hovering over the firing controls. Before anyone could answer, the silver sigil on the anchorage contracted, collapsing into a single brilliant point of light. Then it flared, and a wave of force visible as a ripple in space-time expanded from the station. It wasn't an attack. It was a statement. The Starlight Wanderer was tossed aside, its engines sputtering, its artificial gravity failing. Alarms blared across the open channel from the pirate ship, a chorus of panic and confusion. The wave of force passed harmlessly over the Vigil, causing nothing more than a faint shimmer on the shields. "A ruling given is a path laid," Thorn said, staring in disbelief at his readings. "Not with a weapon. It's issued some kind of nullification field. Their fusion core is stable but inert. Their weapons are powered down. They're dead in the water, but alive. It's waiting." Rostova said, her eyes fixed on the tranquil blue light now bathing her ship. "It's waiting for our judgment." The comm system crackled. It was Ilya Vorchek, his voice a panicked snarl. "Vigil, what did you do? What the hell is that thing?" Rostova stood from her command chair. The weight of 300 years of non-interference policy pressed down on her. The anchorage had not acted as a weapon. It had acted as a court. It had heard two claims, one of brute force and one of established law, and it had chosen the law. Now it was asking the lawbringer to pass sentence. "Ilya Vorchek," Rostova's voice was steady broadcast to the crippled pirate ship. "You are in violation of Compact Quarantine Order 7 Delta. You have discharged forbidden weaponry within a restricted zone. You have willfully attempted to damage a protected stellar artifact." She took a breath. "By the authority granted to me by the Interstellar Compact, and as recognized by the entity known as the Obsidian Anchorage, you will surrender your vessel for impound. The first duty of the law is to be present." A squall of curses came back from Vorchek's ship. Then the pirate captain laughed, a ragged, ugly sound. "Recognized by what commander, your pet ghost, we'll take our chances. The moment your court looks away, we'll light our engines and be gone. You can't touch us." Rostova looked at the impassive obsidian station. It had ceded the next move to her. It had established the framework, and now she had to operate within it. This was no longer about chasing scavengers. It was about setting a precedent, that might echo for 1,000 years. Magister, what is the operational status of the anchorage? She asked quietly. The energy expenditure for its previous action was statistically insignificant. It is measuring our response. Our response, Rostova thought. Not just mine, the compact's. She was the tip of a very long spear, and she was about to teach an ancient power what that spear was for. Jax, she ordered, target the Starlight Wanderer's primary drive. A disabling shot. Use the ion cannon. Minimal damage, maximum effect. Make it clear they are not leaving. Commander Jax hesitated. Firing on a disabled vessel is a violation of protocol. Rostova finished for him. So is allowing a hostile actor to flout a direct order in a quarantine zone, especially when we have an audience. She looked at the blue light connecting her ship to the silent station. We are teaching it our law, Lieutenant. Let's make sure the first lesson is that we enforce it. A teacher's promise is a student's expectation. Jax's jaw tightened. He nodded. Aye, Commander. Targeting their drive cone. Firing on your mark. Mark. A brilliant blue-white lance of ionized particles leaped from the Vigil's dorsal turret. It struck the rear of the Starlight Wanderer with surgical precision. The pirate ship's main thruster assembly, already inert, slagged into a molten ruin under the focused energy. There was no catastrophic explosion, just the quiet, efficient death of a starship's means of escape. The blue light from the anchorage did not waver, but deep within its obsidian heart, new systems began to stir. It had seen a law stated, a judgment given, and a sentence carried out. The Adjudicator had proven its intent. In a quiet observation dome on a colony world 5 systems away, a young girl named Ilara sketched the constellations her father had taught her. She didn't know why, but tonight one of the familiar dark patches of the sky, the one sailors called the ink spill, seemed a little less empty. It was as if a new, impossibly faint star had been born, one that shone with a steady, determined light. The comm channel from the pirate vessel was silent for a full minute. When Vorchek spoke again, the arrogant sneer was gone, replaced by a sullen, defeated rasp. Our flight controls are locked. We surrender. A victory is not the end, but the first line in a new account. Understood. Starlight Wanderer. Rostova replied calmly, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. She had crossed a line she could never uncross. Power down completely and prepare to be boarded. Vigil out. She turned to her crew. The bridge was thick with tension. Dr. Thorne, I want every scrap of data you can pull from the anchorage. What is it? Who built it? Why is it here? Thorne was already at his console, his face illuminated by cascading streams of code. Commander, it's not code. It's mathematics. History presented as a series of proofs. It's a ledger, a record of cosmic debt and payment. He looked up, his expression one of pure awe. This station wasn't built by warriors or explorers. It was built by accountants. Divine accountants. Magister's voice cut in. Rostova's blood ran cold. The Just Resolution was the flagship of Sector Marshal Korich, a man known for his rigid adherence to the letter of the law, not its spirit. A man who would see her actions not as a necessary first contact, but as heresy. When the old law sleeps, the new law must stand alone. On screen, Rostova said, squaring her shoulders. The face of Sector Marshal Korich materialized on the main viewer. He was a stern, gray-haired man whose face seemed carved from granite. He did not waste time with pleasantries. Commander Rostova, report. What is the meaning of this energy signature? Why have you discharged your primary weapon in a quarantine zone? Explain yourself. Behind Koret's image, the obsidian anchorage hung in the void, its blue connection to the vigil a silent, irrefutable fact. Sector Marshal Rostova began, her voice even. I have made contact with a pre-compact artifact. It has designated this vessel as its liaison under a framework of interstellar law. Koret's eyes narrowed. You have violated the non-interference directive, Commander. That artifact is to be cordoned and studied, not adopted as a pet. You will stand down your vessel and prepare to be relieved of command. Before Rostova could reply, Jax spoke up. Sir, with respect, the anchorage initiated contact. It was responding to an illegal salvage attempt. The methods of pirates do not justify the breaking of our most sacred laws, Lieutenant Korik snapped. The scales of justice weigh intent, not method. It wasn't just the pirates, Marshal Rostova said, her gaze unwavering. The anchorage is awake. It is actively monitoring this system. It judged their actions as unlawful and ours as lawful. It has deferred to our authority. To break that trust now, to show it that our law is arbitrary and our command structure is fractured, could be catastrophic. Korik scoffed. You speak as if it is a sentient being, a government. It is a machine, Commander, a relic, and you are relieved. Power down your weapon systems and transfer command codes to the just resolution. The blue light connecting the vigil to the anchorage flickered. Magister said, its voice tight with an uncharacteristic urgency. What kind of reaction? Rostova asked, her eyes locked on Korik's furious face. It is asking them the same question it asked us. Magister paused. A debt cannot be paid by a counterfeit coin. Korik's expression shifted from anger to confusion, as his own comms officer likely relayed the same information. What is this nonsense? Helm lay in a course. We will take the vigil by force if we must. Marshal, I urge you to reconsider. Thorn pleaded from his station. You don't understand what this place is. It does not think in terms of force. It thinks in terms of balance, of ledgers. To introduce violence is to unbalance the equation. Silence, Dr. Korik commanded. Your historical fantasies are irrelevant. The heavy cruiser began to move, its powerful engines glowing hot against the black. It was a predator closing in on its prey. But the prey was not the vigil. The true power in this system remained silent, watching and counting. The moment the just resolution began its burn, the blue light from the anchorage vanished. For a second, the station returned to its inert obsidian state. Rostova's heart sank. Had she been wrong? Had she doomed them all by misinterpreting its intent? Then the silver sigil reappeared. It was no longer a calm, steady brand. It was a raging storm of light spiderwebbing across the station's entire surface. The resonant hum returned 1,000 times stronger, shaking the vigil to its core. Magister's voice was strained, processing an impossible amount of data. Power unchecked is a weapon unleashed. On the bridge of a smuggling ship hiding in the outer system, a grizzled Twi'lek pilot watched his screens in awe. He'd seen the compact ships arrive and was about to flee. Now he couldn't look away. Get this on record, he told his droid. Whatever happens next, the syndicates will pay a fortune to see it. The day the compact police tried to arrest God. Marshal Korik Rostova broadcast, her voice a desperate plea. Power down your engines. You are being perceived as an aggressor. You are invalidating the very law you claim to represent. I will not be lectured by a rogue commander and a haunted house, Korik's voice boomed back. Fire a warning shot across her bow. A small laser battery on the just resolution flashed. The bolt of red energy sliced through the space in front of the vigil, a symbolic act of dominance. The obsidian anchorage did not respond with a laser. It did not respond with a torpedo or a wave of force. It responded with light. From the shattered remnants of the Dyson ring, vast ghostly panels of light began to shimmer into existence. They were ancient energy collectors dormant for eons, now awakened by the anchorage. They swiveled with impossible grace, catching the faint ancient light of the system's dead star and the distant glimmer of the galaxy. They focused it, amplified it, and bent it. Not all mirrors reflect light. Some reflect judgment. "What is that?" Jax breathed, staring at the spectacle unfolding on the viewer. "It's the ring," Thorne whispered. "It's using the entire Dyson ring as a lens. A mirror." The collected light formed a single massive beam, not of destructive energy, but of pure, coherent information. It was aimed directly at the just resolution. The cruiser's shields flared as they tried to disperse the incoming energy, but it wasn't an attack. It was a download. Magister reported its processors screaming to keep up. On the bridge of the just resolution, alarms began to shriek. Consoles sparked as the ship's computer tried to fight off the most elegant denial-of-service attack in history. The ship's own data was being used to overwhelm it. Every hypocritical ruling Korik had ever made, every time he had bent the law for convenience, was now flooding his systems broadcast to his own crew. The truth is the only weapon that grows sharper with use. "Marshal, we're losing system control," Korik's tactical officer yelled. "Our own fire control solutions are being used to lock us out of the network." The just resolution shuddered, its engines sputtering as its own diagnostic programs, triggered by the data flood, began shutting down non-essential systems one by one. The mighty warship was being dismantled from the inside out by its own archived memory. It was being judged not by an external enemy, but by the ghost of its own past actions. Rostova watched in stunned silence. The anchorage hadn't fired a shot. It had held up a mirror and forced the just resolution to look at itself. It was the ultimate lawful act conviction by self-incrimination. "This is its doctrine," Thorne said softly, his voice full of reverence. "This is how it wages war. It doesn't destroy its enemies, it teaches them." This was the core principle of this ancient silent guardian. Rostova finally understood. It did not rule by force or fear. It did not put its subjects in collars to ensure compliance. The obsidian anchorage remembered by ledgers, and it taught by numbers. A cage of iron can be broken. A cage of truth cannot. The just resolution floated dead in the water, silenced not by violence but by the weight of its own history. Its lights flickered and died, leaving it a dark shape against the glowing panels of the Dyson ring. Marshal Korik was no longer broadcasting threats. He was trapped in a prison of his own making. The blue light of adjudication returned, linking the anchorage to the vigil once more. The message was implicit. The challenge has been met. The liability has been contained. The adjudicator's authority is affirmed. What is your next judgment? Rostova looked from the crippled pirate ship to the paralyzed compact cruiser. She was no longer just a patrol commander. She was the sole legal authority in a system containing a power that could humble fleets without firing a shot. A power that had just chosen her, her ship, and her law as its instrument. The weight of that responsibility was heavier than any star. "Magister," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Open a channel to Compact Command. Priority 1. Inform them that Sector Marshal Korik has been relieved of duty under Article 12 of the Command Integrity Act." Commander Jax asked, his eyes wide. "On what grounds?" Rostova looked at the obsidian anchorage, the great and silent teacher. "On the grounds that he was found wanting. The law must serve the truth, not the other way around." In the depths of the anchorage, a single line of code resolved itself in a processing core that had been dormant for 10 million years. The core was not a weapon system. It was a ledger. The entry was simple. The first act was over. The trial had just begun. Rostova knew command would not take this well. They would send more ships, investigators, admirals. They would try to cordon to control, to claim the anchorage for themselves. But they would come into a system where the rules had changed. They would come into a court where the only evidence that mattered was their own actions, and the judge was as old and patient as gravity itself. The civilian vignettes flashing through her mind were no longer abstract. They were the people she was now responsible for protecting, not just with cannons, but with precedent. A family sharing a meal on a distant agro-world. A dock worker guiding a freighter into port. A child learning about the heroes of the compact. She had to ensure the law she represented was worthy of their trust, because the anchorage would accept nothing less. Escalation is the refuge of the unprepared. Jack, send a boarding team to the Starlight Wanderer. Secure Vorchek and his crew. Treat them by the book. No better than the book. I want them treated with perfect adherence to detainee rights. She turned to Thorn. Eris, I need a primer on pre-compact legal theory, specifically anything to do with adjudicator entities or sentient legal frameworks. I have a feeling my next conversation with High Command is going to be educational. Thorn nodded, a grim smile on his face. I believe I have some texts that may be relevant, Commander. Very, very old texts, Magister interjected. What is it? Rostova asked, leaning forward. The AI replied. Its voice for the first time held a trace of something that might have been wonder. On the main screen, a new sigil appeared. It was a perfect circle, representing the whole with a single straight line drawn through its center, representing a balance point. The symbol of a scales simplified to its most basic mathematical truth. A key does not open a door. It accepts a responsibility. Rostova looked at the key, then at her crew, and then out at the silent waiting ships adrift in the graveyard of a star. She had come here to be a watchdog. She had become something more. A custodian. A link in a chain of law stretching back into the unimaginable past. The weight was immense, but for the first time in years, her path was perfectly, terrifyingly clear. Magister, she said, her voice resonating with newfound purpose. Accept the key. The bridge of the vigil was bathed in the soft blue light of the law. The hum of the ship's engines felt different now, no longer the sound of a patrol cutter on a lonely watch, but the steady, rhythmic pulse of a heart, ready for its duty. She was no longer just Commander Rostova of the compact vessel Vigil. She was the adjudicator of the Obsidian anchorage, and the court was now in session. The cost of this victory was her career as she knew it. The prize was a chance to redefine the very meaning of justice in the galaxy. A minor systems failure in the Vigil's life support flickered a small scar from the anchorage's first wave, a reminder that even passive acts had consequences. Her heat margins were stable, but the ship's log would forever carry the energy signature of this moment. The first lesson was complete. Now school was truly in session. The data stream that followed was not a flood, but a quiet offering. It integrated with the Vigil's systems as smoothly as a trusted password. On the main viewer next to the tactical display of the two silenced warships and the crippled pirate vessel, a new window opened. It was stark elegant and displayed a single glowing sigil of a balanced scale. This was the entrance to the ledger. Dr. Thorn Rostova said, her voice echoing in the suddenly cavernous-feeling bridge. You have the con. Work with Magister. I want to understand what we've been given. Jax dispatch a security detail to the Just Resolution. They are to offer assistance and medical aid only. Marshal Korich is to be confined to his quarters but treated with the respect due his rank. He is not a prisoner. He is a patient recovering from a profound system shock. Jax nodded, a flicker of a smile touching his lips. Aye, Commander. A medical situation. A ghost in the machine is merely a memory with a purpose. As her officers moved to carry out her orders, Rostova approached the historian's console. Thorn's fingers were flying across the interface, his face a mask of intense concentration. The screen was filled not with alien script, but with pure universal mathematics. Axioms, proofs, equations that described events not as narratives, but as transactions. It's all here, Thorn murmured, oblivious to her presence. Millennia of it. The rise of a civilization recorded as an accumulated energy surplus. The fall of an empire tracked as a cascade of unpayable debt. Wars are not conflicts. They are hostile audits. Magister's voice was serene but laced with an undercurrent of processing that hinted at the scale of its task. Show me the Vigil's entry, Rostova commanded. A line of data appeared on the screen. It listed their arrival time, their mass, their energy output. Then it listed their actions. The scan of the anchorage, the broadcast of the compact charter, the disabling of the Starlight Wanderer, the defiance of the Just Resolution. Each was a clean, clear entry time-stamped to the microsecond. Beside each entry was a value positive or negative under a column labeled Equity. Their balance was currently 0, a perfect, clean slate. A judgment rendered is a debt created. It's been watching us from the moment we arrived, Rostova realized. It's been weighing us. It weighs everything, Thorn corrected gently. It doesn't seem to possess a concept of good or evil, only of balance and imbalance. Vorchek's attack was an unauthorized withdrawal. Korich's aggression was an attempt to falsify an account. Your actions, Commander. You balanced the books. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. The only sound, the soft chime of consoles, processing an impossible history. Rostova had a fleet to manage, a report, to file that would likely end her career, and a silent, godlike entity hanging in her view screen. The sheer weight of it all threatened to crush her. She steadied herself against a console, the cool metal, a small grounding sensation. The comm system chirped. It was Jax. Commander, we've received a message from the Starlight Wanderer. It's Vorchek. He wishes to confess. Confess? Rostova asked, surprised. To what? Everything, Jax, replied, a note of disbelief in his voice. Illegal salvage smuggling, falsifying cargo manifests. He says, and I'm quoting here, I want it on the record. I want my account cleared. He's treating this like a balance sheet. The anchorage was not just teaching Rostova, it was teaching everyone. Truth once spoken echoes in every room. On the news feeds of the nearby hub station, the first reports were trickling in. An incident in the quarantined Ophiuchus DL system. The heavy cruiser Just Resolution was experiencing communications difficulties. Whispers turned into rumors, a pirate attack, a gravimetric anomaly, a mutiny. In the chaos of information, one image leaked from a long-range smuggler's sensor logs kept appearing, the impossible sight of a shattered Dyson ring glowing with a ghostly, deliberate light. The response from Compact High Command came 48 hours later. It was not a single ship, but a battle group. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen smaller support vessels warping into the system in a terrifying, synchronized display of force. They did not approach the anchorage. They formed a blockade, a perfect sphere of military power with the Vigil at its center. The flagship, the CCS Unwavering Verdict, was commanded by Admiral Cassia Valerius. She was not a blunt instrument like Korich. She was a legend in the Judge Advocate General's Corps, a woman who had dismantled entire rebellions with legal arguments and economic sanctions. Her weapon was the law sharpened to a razor's edge. Her voice, when it came across the comm, was not hostile, hostile. It was cold, precise, and utterly confident. Commander Rostova, I am Admiral Valerius, acting with the full authority of the Compact High Command. You are to surrender your vessel and your command pending a full inquiry into your actions. Acknowledge. The law is a shield for the weak and a hammer for the unwise. Rostova stood before the main viewer looking at the assembled fleet. Her crew was tense, their fear a palpable thing in the recycled air of the bridge. This was not a bully to be faced down. This was the system itself come to correct a deviation. Admiral Valerius Rostova replied, her voice steady. I acknowledge your presence. However, I cannot surrender my vessel. The Vigil has been designated the sole legal arbiter for this system by a native entity of overwhelming power and intelligence. To abandon that post would be a dereliction of a duty that supersedes my current orders. A long silence followed. Valerius was likely surprised. She had expected a frightened commander, not a confident peer. Commander Valerius's voice was laced with something that might have been pity. You are citing the authority of an alien machine that has disabled 2 compact vessels. That is not a legal argument. That is the defense of a cultist. We have dispatched legal counsel to your ship. You will allow them to board. They will advise you on the prudence of compliance. A small, sleek shuttle detached from the Unwavering Verdict. Magister, scan that shuttle, Rostova ordered quietly. The AI replied. They are intended to interface with my core programming and transfer control of the Vigil to the Admiral's flagship. A mirror shows you your face, not your intentions. It was a Trojan horse, a legal maneuver backed by a cyber attack. Valerius wasn't just arguing the law, she was using its procedures as a weapon. Admiral Rostova broadcast, I cannot allow that shuttle to dock. It is broadcasting a hostile override signal. That is an act of aggression, not diplomacy. Valerius's voice remained calm. It is a standard security protocol, Commander. A fail-safe. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Refusing to allow counsel aboard will be entered into the record as an admission of guilt. She was brilliant. She was boxing Rostova and using the Compact's own regulations to paint her as a paranoid rogue. Every move Rostova made to defend herself would look like further proof of her instability. Thorne appeared at her elbow. Commander, the ledgers. The anchorage must have a precedent for this. A legal contest between 2 recognized authorities. Find it, Rostova whispered. Too late, Jack said, his knuckles white. The shuttle is on final approach. If we use point defense, we'll be firing on a diplomatic vessel. It's the end of the line. A debt of honor cannot be paid with treachery. The shuttle was moments from the Vigil's docking port. Rostova's career, her life, hung in the balance. She had one last desperate gambit. She had to trust the teacher. Magister, Rostova said, her voice ringing with clarity. Grant the anchorage direct access to our communications array. All of it. Let it listen to Admiral Valerius, and open a channel to the Admiral's flagship. Patch me through voice only, Magister confirmed. Admiral Valerius Rostova said, ignoring the imminent arrival of the shuttle. Before you proceed, I ask you to consult your own service record, specifically the case of the Cygnus X1 anomaly 30 years ago, the silent choir incident. You were a junior legal officer then. You wrote the prevailing opinion. There was a flicker of something on Valerius's face broadcast from her own bridge. a crack in the icy composure. That incident is classified and irrelevant. Is it? Rostova pressed, her mind racing as Thorne fed her information from the anchorage's ledger. The data was flowing through her, a history of perfect clarity. You argued that a non-sentient networked consciousness, the silent choir, had the right to self-determination and could not be dismantled by the compact, despite its potential value. Your argument was that any entity capable of creating and following its own complex internal logic was for all legal purposes sovereign. You won the case. You set the precedent. A law once written binds the hand that wrote it. The shuttle was meters from their hull. That was a biological network. This is a machine, Valerius countered, but her voice had lost its edge. She knew where this was going. A machine whose internal logic you are currently violating, Rostova stated. The anchorage has established its sovereignty by demonstrating a legal framework more consistent than our own. You are attempting to silence a recognized legal authority with a backdoor command code. By the very precedent you yourself established, Admiral, your actions are illegal. As she spoke the last word, the blue light from the anchorage, which had been dormant, flared to life. But it didn't connect to the vigil. A brilliant, impossibly thin beam of blue light lanced across the system and struck the CCS unwavering verdict. It wasn't an attack. It was a summons. Magister announced. The diplomatic shuttle froze its docking clamps just centimeters from the vigil's hull. On the bridge of the unwavering verdict, alarms blared. But they were not tactical alerts. They were legal notifications flooding every console, appearing on every screen. The ship was being served with a subpoena from a power it could not ignore. The universe keeps very accurate records. Admiral Valerius stared at her screen, where her own words, her own legal arguments from 30 years ago were being displayed. The anchorage wasn't just citing her precedent. It was using her own logic, her own brilliant legal mind, as the basis for its current action. It had held up a mirror just as it had for Korich. But this mirror reflected not a history of violence, but a history of ideals. It was forcing her to choose between her ambition and her principles. A man cannot serve two masters, Rostova thought. A lawyer cannot serve two laws. A civilian news anchor on a deep space station stared at his prompter, his professional demeanor shattering. We are getting reports, he stammered, that the compact fleet in the Ophiuchus sector is in a legal dispute with the system itself. We are advising all civilian traffic to remain clear as we try to verify this. The absurdity of the situation was a virus spreading through the public consciousness. The standoff lasted for an hour. The shuttle hung motionless. The blue light held the Admiral's flagship in a grip tighter than any tractor beam. The rest of the compact fleet waited, their orders contradictory, their commanders witnessing a battle of concepts they were not equipped to fight. Finally, the blue light vanished. The shuttle gracefully reversed course and returned to the unwavering verdict. A new message came. It was from Valerius. Commander Rostova, the Admiral's voice was strained heavy with the weight of a profound defeat. High Command has reconsidered. The quarantine of this system is to be maintained. Your vessel will remain as the sole liaison. We will provide logistical support, but you will act as the final authority on all interactions with the entity. She paused. You have made your point. The precedent holds. A victory of principle is a victory for all. Valerius had chosen her principles over her orders. She had upheld the law she had written even at the cost of her mission. The anchorage had not just defeated her, it had converted her. Thank you, Admiral Rostova said the words, feeling inadequate. "Do not thank me," Commander Valerius replied, a new, weary respect in her tone. "Just be worthy of the law you now represent." Valerius out. The battle group did not leave. It simply repositioned, turning its cordon from a prison into a shield protecting the system from the outside galaxy. The message was clear. This place was different now. It was under a new jurisdiction. On the bridge of the vigil, a collective sigh of relief was released. They had survived. They had won. But the victory felt heavy. Lieutenant Jax looked at Rostova, his expression a mixture of awe and fear. "Commander, what have we become?" "We've become accountable," Rostova answered, her voice soft. The cost was clear. They were now isolated, a power unto themselves, bound by a law so old it was new again. They could never simply go back to being a patrol cutter. That part of their lives was over. A diagnostic on the comm system reported a minor energy burnout from channeling the anchorage's legal summons, a small permanent scar on the ship's nervous system. The weight of a crown is measured in the trust it carries. In the weeks that followed, the Ophiuchus DL system became the most studied and feared place in the compact. Scientists and theologians debated the nature of the obsidian anchorage. Legal scholars pored over the scant details of the Valerius precedent, trying to understand the new rules of engagement. Rostova and her crew became custodians not just of the station, but of the very concept it represented. Thorne, working with Magister, began the monumental task of translating the ledgers. They were not just records of debt and payment. They were a history of the universe written in the language of cause and effect. They found records of civilizations that had seeded life on 1 billion worlds, their equity recorded as a positive balance of unimaginable scope. They found warnings, too, records of species that had consumed their own galaxies, their accounts ending in a stark, terrifying entry. The anchorage was not a god. It was not a weapon. It was a record keeper. A cosmic auditor ensuring that in the long run all books must be balanced, all debts must be paid. Rostova's role evolved. She became a true adjudicator. When 2 mining corporations brought a dispute to her over a contested asteroid, she didn't consult compact law. She asked the anchorage. The station responded by providing a complete history of the asteroid's formation, revealing a deposit of rare isotopes that would be destroyed by conventional mining. It then outlined a cooperative extraction method that would preserve the isotopes and double the profits for both corporations. It solved the dispute not by dividing the prize but by revealing a better way to share it. The anchorage taught by numbers. It remembered by ledgers. It never sought to control, only to inform. Its only demand was that the accounts be settled. Rostova stood on her bridge looking at the silent black station that had so completely upended her life. The cold of the deck plates under her boots was a familiar anchor in a universe that felt new and strange. The low hum of the vigil's life support was the sound of her new reality. She knew she would likely spend the rest of her life here in this system, the guardian of a truth the galaxy was not yet ready to learn. She was no longer a soldier in a hierarchy. She was a steward of a principle. She recorded her final log entry on the matter, not for the compact, but for herself, for the record. "We came here to enforce a quarantine to keep people out. We were wrong. The anchorage isn't a prison to be sealed away. It's a library, a school, and its lessons are simple. Every action has a consequence. Every choice is a transaction. The universe doesn't forgive debt, but it does, if you listen, offer a path to payment." As she finished speaking, a new entry blinked into existence on the ledger display. It was the account for the compact itself. The balance was a long, complex number, deep in the negative. But beside it, a new status had appeared, a single word glowing with calm blue light. A single candle can illuminate the path out of any debt.